Hello Tritons, whether you're a new Triton or a returning one.
Welcome to Fall Quarter.
We are thrilled to be here.
To support you wherever you are on your journey.
ISPO is here for you.
Whether you are in this time zone
or somewhere else around the world.
Many of you will be joining us from your home countries.
While some are on campus or down the street.
We are here for you.
We are ready to connect with you.
To make sure that you have the support you need.
This quarter is unlike any before and likely any to come.
Just know that no matter the challenges you face,
we are here to support you.
So as you prepare to start your courses, just remember,
we are a phone call, email, or Zoom meeting away.
ISPO is here for you.
ISPO is here for you.
Welcome to Fall Quarter.
Hello to all of our newly admitted Tritons for Fall 2020. Whether you are joining us from inside of the US or from the other side of the world, on behalf of the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Tricia Schuler, and I'm the Assistant Director of International Student Services here at ISPO. I am joined by my colleague, Argeria Williams, who will be helping out with any of the Q&A submitted tonight. A few housekeeping items before we begin today. First of all, you are on listen-only mode. You can hear us, but we can't hear you. Next, we are recording. This webinar will be posted at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. And lastly, please use the Q&A box to get your questions answered. Even if we aren't able to answer them today through chat or during our Q&A at the end of our session, we'll do our best to make sure that we provide answers by updating our coronavirus FAQ page for newly admitted students. Today's session is relevant to students who are planning to remain outside of the US this fall and will begin their programs of study remotely. We will talk about your support system on campus, discuss F1 and J1 regulations. We will review your immigration documents together and review resources for travel and emergencies. Throughout our time together, I may ask you some questions, so pay attention. Locate the raise hand icon on your screen to stay engaged. So if you are able to see the raise hand icon, let's see if you can raise your hand. Oops, actually it may not be, we might not have turned it on for this webinar. So if you can't raise your hand, that's okay. We'll go through the videos and hopefully you can get the questions answered on your own. ISPO is here for you. We know that this quarter will be unlike any other. So as you prepare to start your programs, know that ISPO is your one stop for questions and resources. We have 20 friendly advisors, administrative staff, and student assistants who are ready to help you. ISPO can advise you on understanding your immigration status, rules for working on and off campus, traveling, and on how to navigate academic adjustment and campus life. Another form of advising that ISPO does is programming or hosting engaging events or programs to help you create the best experience while studying at UC San Diego. ISPO is not the only office on campus who will help you during your program. If you're a graduate student, contact your graduate coordinator of your program. If you're an undergraduate student, familiarize yourself with your college academic advising office. They'll help you navigate making progress during your program. You can also rely on your professors in your classes and faculty in your department. Lastly, there are many other offices on campus that can help you during your program. Sometimes asking one question, such as, "Can I study part-time this quarter?" will require that you communicate with ISPO, your college or department, and the office of the registrar. So as you can see, your support system at UC San Diego is made up of various units on campus. As you transition to virtual communication with campus units, take note of the varying communication methods. While ISPO is available through Zoom advising on an online basis, other campus units may only be available through the Virtual Advising Center or only by email. Now let's look at some rules that will apply to you this fall quarter. We use the term maintaining status quite a bit when talking about regulations. But what does it actually mean to maintain your status? What does it mean to hold an active SEVIS record, a valid F1 or J1 status, or even fall out of status? When ISPO first issues you a Form I-20 or DS-2019, you hold initial status. This means you're ready to start your program on the program start date listed on your document. Once you arrive to the US and start your program, ISPO will then activate your SEVIS record. Maintaining status means that you will follow certain rules and regulations and reporting requirements for the duration of your program. If you don't follow the rules, you can then fall out of status, which is not a good thing. You always want to make sure that you are maintaining good status in the US. So we will talk about how to maintain status. You are expected to maintain your status by following the rules and regulations through the last day of enrollment or classes. Please note that the program end date on your Form I-20 or DS-2019 is only an expected program end date. ISPO will adjust the program end date on your I-20 or DS-2019 to the actual last day of enrollment as you get closer to the end of your program of study. From your true program end date, you continue to maintain your status, but you enter into what's called your grace period. The grace period allows you to plan for your next step. You can apply for work, start classes at a new school, prepare to depart the US, or even change your visa status. F1 students have a 60-day grace period, while J1 students have a 30-day grace period. You continue to maintain active status if you apply to work after graduation. If you transfer to a new school to start graduate studies within the next 5 months after the end of your current program, you'll return to initial status at the new school and start this process again. However, if you decide to depart the US or do not take any action before the end of your grace period, your SEVIS record will auto-complete and will no longer be active. So let's talk about what does maintaining my status mean? And we're going to focus on 3 of these because most of you will be outside the US for the fall term. Maintaining status means that you will follow certain rules, regulations, and reporting requirements for the duration of your program. F1 and J1 students outside of the US for the fall quarter who hold initial status are not subject to these regulations until arrival. Let's look at some of these rules that may impact you even if you start your program remotely. You should plan to enroll and remain enrolled in a minimum of 12 units each academic quarter at UC San Diego. Summer is not required and is considered a vacation. International students are required to enroll full-time. However, there are exceptions to taking less than 12 units. Prior to dropping to less than 12 units, apply for a reduced course load from ISPO through the iPortal. Since your I-20 or DS 2019 is not yet activated, ISPO will not reflect an approval of a reduced course load on your I-20 or DS 2019. However, you will still be required to request the authorization in iPortal for the fall term. If you end up taking less than 12 units this fall, you'll still be eligible to use your academic reduced course load or medical reduced course load once you arrive to campus. Think of this fall 20 quarter as a time to practice and adjust to your classes at UC San Diego while you are enrolled remotely. Now let's test your knowledge about academic integrity. Now I think that for some reason the raise hand functionality is not turned on for this webinar, so unfortunately you won't be able to raise your hand, but try to answer the question in your mind.
If my friend and I study together, it's okay to submit the exact same assignment and paper to our professor, since we'll probably come up with the same answers.
Okay, so hopefully you all thought that the answer was false. So if you are doing work with a friend, make sure that you submit independent work to the professor, unless explicitly stated by your professor otherwise. Academic integrity violations have a serious impact on your immigration status. Learn about excelling with integrity by visiting the Academic Integrity Office at aio.ucsd.edu. Review course syllabi and understand what is expected of you when collaborating with your classmates and conducting research. Those who are subject to suspensions due to academic integrity violations can face 1 quarter to 1 full academic year suspensions. This may cause delayed enrollment at UCSD and ultimately the inability to continue your program of study online or in person with UC San Diego. Now let's test your knowledge about academic integrity, about work authorization.
Now that I have a social security card, I can work anywhere, anytime.
Okay, so this one was also false. F1 and J1 students who do not hold active status are not subject to employment regulations for international students. Do not start working until you have the proper work authorization to do so. International students outside the US for the fall term planning to work for UC San Diego remotely will need to work directly with your hiring departments to discuss your plans to work remotely from abroad. It is possible to work remotely for UC San Diego without being in the US in F1 or J1 status. However, it is important to note that it is your responsibility to comply with all applicable income tax laws, including tax filing and payment mandates of the US, California, and any country where you reside and work. If you happen to find an employment opportunity in your home country, and it is for a US employer, be transparent. Let them know that you do not hold a valid F1 or J1 status. So let's now move on to what's called our document self-check. If you have these documents handy, take them out. Please take out your passport, your visa page, which is inside of your passport, for those of you who have your visa at this time. Many of you may not have your visa yet, and that's okay. You should also have a Form I-20 or DS 2019, though I know that many of you are also waiting for an updated Form I-20 or DS 2019 with the winter 21 start date. And then the Form I-94 can only be printed once you have entered the US. So if you are outside the US, you will also not have your Form I-94 at this time, but we'll go over what that document is. So let's test your knowledge about immigration documents.
I think I can throw away past immigration documents like my I-20 and DS 2019, if I get updated ones.
Okay, so that was false. You always want to keep all copies of your Form I-20 or Form DS 2019. Your immigration documents are extremely important. You'll use them during your program to apply for work authorization, a driver's license, a bank account, Social Security card, and other benefits. As you've just learned, keep all copies of your Form I-20 or DS 2019 from ISPO and every U.S. institution you attend. You never know when you'll need them. Keep all your documents valid and up to date. It's also a good idea to take photos of your documents and keep digital copies on your phone so that they are accessible. Lastly, each time that you enter the U.S., remember to do a document self-check. So let's take a look at your passport first. When looking at your passport, ensure that your biographical information is correct. Also note the expiration date on your passport. Your passport must be valid for at least 6 months into the future from your date of entry into the U.S. You can also renew your passport inside or outside the US at your country's embassy or consulate. The next document to take a look at is your US visa. For those of you who already applied and have received your US visa, this page should be located inside of your passport. You can think of your visa like a key. Like a key, you only need a valid visa to enter the US. However, once you're inside of the US, it's okay if you no longer have the key or a valid visa. So as long as you are maintaining your student status, you can remain in the US, even if your visa is expired. When you look at your visa, ensure that your biographical information is correct. Also note the number of entries, which lets you know how many times you can enter the US. S for a single time, or a single entry, or M for multiple entries. Also note the expiration date. If your visa expires, it can only be renewed outside of the US in a US embassy or consulate. So let's test your knowledge with this question. You are inside of the US and notice that your F1 visa is expiring in 2 months, which is in the middle of the fall quarter. Can you remain in the US legally? So the answer is yes. As long as you are maintaining your status, your student status, you can remain in the US legally, even with an expired visa. But the next time that you exit the US, if you want to return in F1 or J1 status, you will need to renew your visa outside of the US to request entry in F1 or J1 status. And finally, let's take a look at the Form I-20 for F1 students and DS 2019 for J1 students. Make sure that the program end date, which is the expected or projected program end date, is valid, in addition to the program level, major, and biographical information. You must submit any changes within 10 days by submitting a request to ISPO through the iPortal. So if you have a change to your major or your program level, please make sure to submit that request through the iPortal to update your I-20 or DS 2019. You should have all logged into the iPortal and requested a requested a winter 2021 program start date. If you have submitted your request and it is in preliminary approval, that is okay. You will be receiving updates soon. However, if you have not yet requested that your document reflect the quarter start date that you plan to enter the US, you will need to log into the iPortal and submit the new admit I-20 or DS 2019 amendment requests so that ISPO can adjust your CBIS record. Only once that you have arrived in the US will you then receive your most updated electronic form I-94. This is known as your arrival departure record. You can generate your electronic form I-94 online about 24 to 48 hours upon arrival by visiting i94.cbp.dhs.gov. This is where you'll enter your information from your passport. And then you'll be able to print your Form I-94. Check the I-94 to ensure the class of admission is correct. The admit until date states D/S, which stands for duration of status, and that your name is correct. If any of this information is incorrect, contact ISPO. In addition to your immigration documents, you'll also need to ensure that you report your most updated address to ISPO. Do this by visiting tritonlink.ucsd.edu and click on Addresses to update your local address, foreign address, and also emergency contact information within 10 days of any change. Please note that for the fall term, if you are outside of the US, you can enter an international address in the current address field. There are instructions on Triton Link on how to input your foreign address if needed. As many of you are preparing to travel or will travel eventually, visit itravel.ucsd.edu to learn about what documents you may need when seeking re-entry into the US. Also, for those of you who are planning to explore California's amazing locations, when you arrive, learn about what documents you should carry when traveling within the US. Ensure that you have a valid travel signature on the second page of your Form I-20 or on the first page of the Form DS 2019. On the Contact Us page of ISPO's orientation website, you will also find a download link for ISPO's International Student Emergency Contacts. You can download this card and keep it as a digital copy on your phone. It contains important phone numbers as well as tips on what to do if you are detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I hope you all learned so much from today's session. All of today's information is available on our website at istudents.ucsd.edu. ISPO also provides updates to immigration regulations and reminders to updates to help you maintain your status on our Instagram and Facebook account. Another useful tool is the UC San Diego mobile app, which has tools to navigate campus. And lastly, we do our best to remind you of regulatory updates through social media, UC San Diego's mobile app, and through ISPO's weekly iStudents newsletter sent to your UC San Diego email. But ultimately, it is up to you to stay up to date and to know the rules. So it looks like for this webinar, I don't think students were able to submit Q&A questions.
Sorry, hi Trisha, yes they are.
Oh, they are submitting.
Yeah, they are able to
Great.
submit, and I do see that they are able to raise their hand as well. So.
And they are, okay.
Yes.
I think it's just that I'm not able to see it. Okay,
yeah.
Great. So let's go ahead then. And I know that Argeria's been busy answering questions. So Argeria, are there any questions that maybe we can address live?
Yeah, definitely. So I have two available now. The first one is, do we need to have the visa before the fall quarter begins? If we are planning to defer to winter, is it okay to do the visa interview during the next few weeks or months ahead?
That is a great question. So if you are planning to be outside of the US for the fall term, and you're planning only to enter the US in the winter or a later term, then you do not need to have your visa until right before your planned entry into the US for the winter 21 term. So if you don't have a visa now, that's totally fine if you are outside the US and not planning to enter until a later term.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Trisha. And the other question we have in the queue are, what are the potential consequences of working without the F1 visa from outside of the US?
Great question. So if you are outside of the US, that means for the fall term, that means you are not in a valid F1 or J1 status. So technically you are eligible to be employed while in your home country. However, there are important considerations. You'll need to consider tax implications, so your own country's tax law as well as US, and you will need to consult with the UC San Diego hiring department or the US employer as to how they will be able to pay you while you are overseas.
Perfect. And we got a couple other ones. So another student asked, if I already have my visa from my previous American high school, do I need to get a new visa?
So that is a great question. So generally, if you transferred your I-20 or your CVIS record from your high school to UCSD, and it's the same CVIS record, that number will match the same number on your visa. And you should be fine to use that unexpired visa. If you were issued a new I-20 from UCSD, and then the CVIS I-20 number does not match the one on your visa, we advise you to follow up with the US Embassy to determine if you will need to apply for a new visa.
Perfect. And then looks like we have a couple more. Can we change the program start date on our I-20 or DS 2019 if the visa interview gets canceled or gets pushed back?
So that is a good question. So I'm assuming that your question is, if my visa interview gets pushed back, can I request an adjustment to my program start date on the I-20 or DS 2019? So if your current I-20 has a fall start date and your visa interview is after the fall starts, then you should request an adjustment to your I-20 start date with a winter 21 adjustment.
Perfect. Let's see, a couple more getting submitted. Oh, okay, this is a good one. If we are not physically in the US for the fall quarter, do we still have to pay for the health insurance?
That's a good question. So the UC SHIP health insurance is a mandatory or required fee, and it is assessed to all students at UC San Diego. However, my understanding is that the Student Health Services is accepting waivers to the UC SHIP requirement for students that are outside of the US who can meet the waiver requirements. So you'll need to take a look at the UCSD Student Health website and just search for UC SHIP waiver information, and there will be instructions there on how to request the waiver and what the eligibility requirements are.
Awesome, thank you, Trisha. And then there is another question about enrollment. So if I only have 9 units required this quarter, do I need to apply for a reduced course load?
Yes, so we encourage all students, all newly admitted students, to enroll in a full course load, which is 12 units. That is a standard for all students coming to UC San Diego to be full-time enrolled students. If for some reason you do need to drop below the 12 units, then we are asking students, international students that are outside of the US for fall, to submit the reduced course load request for F1 students.
Perfect. Okay, and then it looks like another one that just came through. Is it possible to take all courses remotely this fall quarter and then choose to gap for the winter? Just in case that winter quarter will not have remote instruction available.
Yes, it is possible to take a leave or a gap term in a future term. You will need to consult with ISPO on what that means for your F1 or J1 record.
Trisha. Okay, let's see. See if we have any other good ones. Okay, so another one is, my visa is expiring in April 2020. Do I need to renew my visa before I plan to enter the US for the winter quarter?
So just to clarify, the visa is expiring in April 2021?
2020.
So the visa already expired in April 2020?
Yes, that's what the question.
Okay, and the student is wanting to enter the US.
Oh, it looks like they clarified. Sorry, 2021. So it looks like it's valid. Their visa is valid until April 2021, and they're planning to enter in the winter quarter.
Okay. Yes, so in that case, the visa is still valid into the future. It does not expire until April of 2021. The winter quarter starts in January of 2021. So at that time of entry, your visa is still valid. So you can use that visa to request entry to the US.
Perfect. Okay, and then it looks like there's one about student services. So the question is there any way that students can access CAPS services from abroad?
Services. So ISPO does not offer tax advice because we are not tax specialists.
Oh, sorry, Trisha, it was CAPS.
Oh, CAPS. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. So CAPS is CAPS is counseling and psychological services. If you are an enrolled student at UC San Diego, whether you are here physically or abroad, you are eligible to use CAPS services, so counseling and psychological services.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. So another one that came through is, do I need or am I able to be guaranteed housing if in the winter, if I am studying outside of the US in the fall quarter?
I can't answer that question. I think we would need to refer you to housing to verify housing availability in the winter.
Yes.
So for that one, you might need to follow up with housing.
Perfect. Okay, and then it looks like we have a visa question. My visa is for my high school, and the name of my high school is on my visa page. Do I need to renew it?
So this is similar to one of the previous questions that I answered. So as long as the CVIS ID number is the same, so it starts with N00 and then a bunch of numbers. So that number should match your UCSD I-20 if you transferred your record from the high school to UCSD. And if that matches on your visa, then you should be good to go. You know, even if your visa has the name of your high school or the name of your previous institution, that's okay as long as the CVIS number is the same.
Perfect. And then looks like we have another visa-related question. Will it have any effect on me if I stay in the US with an expired visa and then try to renew my visa at a later time?
That's a good question. So you are eligible to remain in the US with an expired visa. It should not have any impact on a future visa renewal as long as you have been maintaining your student status in the US.
Perfect. We've got a lot of good questions coming through. It looks like another one, which is a really good one, is what is the latest date that we can enter the US for the fall quarter before we have to change our start date to the winter?
Good question. So October 16th is the last day that we're advising students to enter the US for the fall term. If you're unable to enter the US by October 16th, you should plan to remain in your home country or outside the US and plan to enter for the winter. October 16th is, in terms of the academic calendar, it is also just, the last day to add classes for winter, for fall.
For fall. Okay, perfect. It looks like we may have time for just maybe one more question.
Sure.
Let me just try to find a stream through. Oh, okay. When can we arrive to the US if we are entering with a winter quarter start date?
So if you have been issued a I-20 or DS 2019 with a winter 21 start date, you are eligible to enter the US up to 30 days prior to the program start date listed on your document.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. And then there's a common question that I wanted to also ask Trisha, but I know that we don't yet have an answer. What is the status of winter quarter? Will it be offered in a hybrid online model?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, we don't know yet. The university is, of course, making plans and taking a lot of things into consideration. But at this time, there's so much change and so much influx in terms of health and safety guidance and plans for the university that those plans have not yet been finalized or publicized.
Perfect. Thank you, Trisha.
No problem. Okay, so let's go on to some final reminders. Okay, so just a reminder about the rest of our orientation program. So please note that there are a lot of programs that we have created for you to meet with one another. Even if you are outside of the US, we have these meetups where you can meet up with other students. These are hosted for students, by students, and they are a place where you can connect to fellow Tritons with similar interests. Those are the interest group meetups. Then we have regional group meetups, which are again hosted by students to meet students from their own region and to give them advice for studying as an international student at UCSD. And then finally, you can take a look at our ievents.ucsd.edu for a compilation and calendar of events that are internationally focused. So this includes a lot of our different programs, excursions, if you are here physically, and discussions to connect you to campus community and to the world around us. And then finally, before we say goodbye, a few reminders. Please continue to register for other orientation sessions by visiting ioorientation.ucsd.edu. At the end of this session, you'll get an email with a survey. Please fill it out and let us know how we can better serve you. Stay up to date by visiting iupdates.ucsd.edu and by checking your UC San Diego email for weekly ISPO newsletters. And lastly, you can always contact ISPO at icontact.ucsd.edu and follow us on social media. Thank you all for attending today's session. And again, whether you are joining us from inside of the US or from the other side of the world, on behalf of the International Students and Programs Office here at UC San Diego, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. Have a great fall quarter, and we'll see you all at our next session.